From the pasuk Vayomer Hashem el Moshe ve'el Aaron, Hashem says to Moshe and Aaron, HaChodesh hazeh lachem, this will be the month, the beginning of the months of the year, etc. We also learn out the concept of Kiddush HaChodesh, of establishing the new month based on the sighting that witnesses see the new moon, they come to Beis Din and testify, etc. Reb Shimon learns from this pasuk that relatives would be allowed to come together to testify. Because in the pasuk it says, Hashem says to Moshe and Aaron, HaKodesh hazeh lachem. Now Moshe and Aaron are brothers. We learn that they too, as brothers, would be able to testify. On the other hand, the Chachamim hold that no, brothers or relatives would be possible. And HaKodesh hazeh lachem is teaching us, Vayomer Hashem el Moshe ve'el Aaron, HaKodesh hazeh lachem is teaching us that we need people like Moshe and Aaron, great people amongst the Yidden. In other words, we need a Beis Din to establish Kiddush HaKodesh. The Rebbe Maharash explains the opinion of Rabbi Shimon why Kiddush HaChodesh would be different to other testimonies where relatives should be able to be trusted. That's because Beis Din anyways make the calculations to see whether the moon is going to be sighted, and therefore this Eidus is not like something we wouldn't have known without the Eidus, and therefore even relatives are believed. The Rebbe asks, seemingly the disqualification of relatives usually is not because of the concern that they're going to lie, but it's mainly because of a Gzeiras HaKosov. The Torah decreed that they're not believed together. So what difference does it make whether Beis Din could have known this without the Eidus? So the Rebbe is going to explain that there are two different types of testimonies. Eid Kiddush HaChodesh is different than most other testimonies. That is, in a regular Eidus, it's not only what we call birur, that the Eidus are just clarifying to us or verifying logically that we now believe them, makes sense that we should believe two witnesses that they said that they saw something. It's something much more than that. It's what we call a Gzeiras HaKosov. The Torah says that once Eidus said something, then we believe them and the matter is established in this particular way. It's also a Gzeiras HaKosov that relatives are possible. That even if there's no concern that they're going to lie. Because the special power that Torah gave to Eidus, Torah did not give to relatives, if they're coming together to testify. But going back to Eidus HaChodesh, since, as we said, that Beis Din doesn't really need the Eidus, they made their own calculations anyways, therefore Reb Shimon holds that for the Eidus HaChodesh, it's enough. Just this birur aspect of the Eidus, in other words, just this fact that we also have the Eidus verifying what happened, and therefore, since there's no concern that they're going to lie, we don't think that there's any reason they should lie when they saw the moon, so therefore relatives would be believed for this Eidus. Says the Rebbe, this would also explain another aspect. We said that Reb Shimon learns it from Moshe and Aaron, but the problem is, according to the view that says that all Yidden by Yetzias Mitzrayim had a din of Geirim, of converts, and converts are not considered, although biologically related to each other, are not considered related to each other, even close relatives. So Moshe and Aaron then also have a din of Geirim, who are not related to each other. So how would that be a proof that nowadays even relatives could be Eidus for Kiddush HaChodesh if Moshe and Aaron themselves are not considered relatives? But based on what we just explained, we're going to understand this. And the reason for that is because usually we say that relatives that are Geirim could testify each other because, again, the whole reason they shouldn't testify is a Gzeiras HaKosov. It's just a decree of the Torah. And if halacha itself says they're not related, so no problem, they could testify for each other. However, says the Rebbe, in the type of Eidus, which is not based on this idea of the special power that Eidus has, but we're more speaking about it in the logical way, that we believe Eidus, when they come to say something, we believe them in a logical way. So then, the problem with these kind of Eidus, when they are relatives, is only going to be because, again, not the Gzeiras HaKosov aspect, it's just a concern. Sometimes relatives, because they're close to each other, they might be biased and they might cover up for each other, etc., etc. So now, in the case of brothers that converted, they're related biologically, there should still be this concern that they still would cover up for each other. And if yet the Torah says that Moshe and Aaron would be kosher for Eidus, that means the Torah says there's still no problem. Therefore, Reb Shimon says we could apply it also to after Matan Torah. This was all Reb Shimon. Now we move on to the Chachamim, who the halacha is like, that relatives are possible for Eidus HaChodesh. Which would tell us that according to the Chachamim, Eidus HaChodesh is not just a matter of clarifying or verifying that the moon was actually seen, But rather, according to them, we need this special din of edus, like regular cases of testimony, and therefore all ideas of testimony apply, including the fact that you can't use relatives. Why would that be? So the Rebbe says their logic would be because the actual fact that the Torah is telling us that despite the fact that we have calculations, Torah still wants you to have edus. That tells us that the Torah wants something more than just the clarification according to the calculations. The Torah wants to establish also the special power of edus. And that's why they say, no, it needs to have all, therefore it has to have all the dinim of edus, and we can't have relatives, etc., etc. The question is, however, why? Why would we need both things, both the calculations and the witnesses? So, and to the extent, in fact, that so much of the calculation is important, that if the witnesses come along and say they saw the moon, and the Beis Din says, no, it doesn't fit with the calculations, it's impossible, we're actually not even going to believe the edus. How do we understand this? So the Rebbe is going to explain it mainly al pi chassidus. And the Rebbe says, really, each one of these two, the Eidei Re'iyah, the witnesses that saw the moon, and the idea of making a calculation, each one has its own special advantage that the other doesn't have. And establishing Rosh Chodesh is something so crucial, important, and fundamental in Torah and mitzvahs, that's why in this particular thing we need to have both. In order to understand this, says the Rebbe, we know the famous Maimer Chazal that tells us that the Torah should have started with HaChodesh Hazelochem, with this pasuk. Rashi explains why HaChodesh Hazelochem, because this is the first mitzvah that Eden were commanded. This they got even while they were still in Mitzrayim. And the question is really why? Why is this the first mitzvah they got? Shouldn't the first mitzvah be Anoichi Hashem Elekecha, accepting the yoke of Hashem? This is the foundation for all mitzvahs. So the explanation is, yes, Anoichi Hashem Elekecha is the foundation for the fulfillment of all the mitzvahs. But HaChodesh Hazelochem is telling us the purpose, the goal. What are we achieving through all of the Torah and mitzvahs? And therefore this is said as an introduction before everything else. What does this mean? The whole idea of Torah and mitzvahs is that Yidden should achieve what we call a chidush, a novelty, something new in the creation. The Yidden should make this world a dira for Hashem. Hashem created the world yesh meyayin, something out of nothing. Yet the Yid is going to cause that this world of Yeshus, a world that seems to be an entity for itself, should become bottled, should become nullified, should become ayin, and thereby becoming a place for Hashem. Says the Rebbe, that's the pshat HaChodesh Hazelochem. HaChodesh, the chidush, the idea of chidush, that we could cause such a novel thing in the world, is given lochem to you. The Yidden are the ones that through Torah and mitzvahs have the power to be able to achieve this. Says the Rebbe, based on this, we'll also understand an interesting medrash that speaks about the special uniqueness about this parsha of HaChodesh Hazelochem, that it was given through Moshe and Aaron. And the question is, so why is that such a big deal that it was given through Moshe and Aaron? And there's other parshas that were given through Moshe and Aaron. Why do we focus on this one? So the Rebbe says, when we speak about making the world a dira lo yizborich b'tachtoinim, there are two major points of it, two major novel ideas. Number one is that this lowly world can become fitting to be a dira, a place for Hashem. That's a tremendous chidush. And the chidush in that is, again, we're taking this gashmi-isdika world. That's a yeshus-dika world, a world full of self and ego and existence. And we're making this, that this should be bottled, nullified to Hashem. And number two, the chiddush is that Atzmus, the very essence of Hashem, should come down here and be revealed like a person is with his whole essence in the place where he lives. And that's a tremendous chiddush. Usually the creation of the world is just what we call ha'ara, a little ray of Hashem, from Hashem's speech. But it's specifically through the avodah of the Yid, being mevatel, nullifying his yeshus and the yeshus of the world, this tremendous chiddush that happens, that we draw down Atzmus. And this is what the Medrash is saying, that specifically this parsha that expresses the whole point of Torah and mitzvahs, HaChodesh Hazelochem, to make this chidush in the world, emphasizes the two ideas of the Dir Lo Yizbarich. And that's why we have Moshe and Aaron over here. It's known that Moshe is called Shushvina de Malka, and Aaron is called Shushvina de Matronisa. Shushvin literally means the unterfeer, the one that brings the chosen to the chuppah. Malka is the king, bringing Hashem down here. Aaron is called Shoshvina de Matronisa, the unterfeer, the one bringing the Yidden up closer to Hashem, the world closer to Hashem. And that's why in this parsha we emphasize both things, Moshe and Aaron. Moshe's idea of drawing down a likus, which is the chiddush of bringing atzmus into the world, and Aaron's idea of elevating the world. Mulmato l'mayla, he's the one that gives us the ability that the world should become a dira for the Eibishter. Says the Rebbe, Just like Achoidish Shaz Elochem expresses the purpose of Torah and mitzvahs within the world, so too it also expresses what Torah and mitzvahs achieve, the aliyah that happens in Bnei Yisrael. Generally, we know the Yidden are compared to the moon. And the renewal of the moon, and the moon becoming bigger, represents the renewal and aliyah of Bnei Yisrael through Torah and mitzvahs. And here too we have two ideas. One is the special aliyah that happens through the Yid's avodah, what we call koiches pnimiyim, his inner faculties, his avodah al pitam v'das, with logic, with reason, etc. The special quality of this avodah is that all of his faculties, his seichel and midas, are all becoming permeated with avodas Hashem. And then there is the avodah of what we call etzem haneshama, the very essence of the soul, which is mainly expressed in a bittul being nullified in a way that's beyond logic and reason. Now we come back to the idea of Kiddush HaChodesh. Says the Rebbe, this is now the inner reason why by this specific mitzvah of Kiddush HaChodesh, we have the two ideas. We have the witnesses that sighted the moon, and we have the calculations. Generally, seeing is something that goes beyond logic and reason. We see things, even if we don't understand it, we now know it as a fact. So that's the idea of Re'iyah. It's higher than Seichel. And the idea of Eidus, as we said before, it's giving it a special power according to Torah. So this represents this avodah, this bittul that goes beyond logic and reason. At the same time, we also need the calculations, meaning we also want that it should fit in with Tam Vadas, with Seichel, with logic and reason. Meaning to say that the whole point is that the bittul that's higher than Tam Vadas should come down and also impact the person in a Pnimiyas way.